Look behind you. No, don't turn around, not yet, because if you do, you might see them. The shadow people. They're here. They've always been here. Watching, waiting. And tonight, you'll learn why. Have you ever felt a cold breath on the back of your neck when no one was there? Or seen a shadow move on its own? These aren't just tricks of the light. These are the shadow people. And they're closer than you think. Stories of the shadow people have existed for centuries. In every culture, in every corner of the world, there are tales of dark, human-like figures lurking in the corners of rooms, standing at the foot of beds, or watching from the edges of forests. But what are they? Ghosts? Demons? Or something worse? Some say they're the spirits of the dead trapped between worlds. Others believe they're interdimensional beings, slipping into our reality through cracks we can't see. But one thing is certain, they're not here to help. In 1998, a woman in Ohio woke up to find a tall, shadowy figure standing at the foot of her bed. It had no face, no features, just darkness. She tried to scream, but no sound came out. And then, it was gone. In 2015, a man in England captured something terrifying on his security camera. A shadowy figure darted across his living room, but no one was there. When he played the footage back, he noticed something chilling. The shadow was looking right at him. Scientists have tried to explain the shadow people. Some say it's sleep paralysis, a trick of the mind when you're caught between dreams and reality. Others point to infrasound, frequencies too low for humans to hear, but that can cause feelings of dread and hallucinations. But what if it's not just science? What if the shadow people are real? What if they've always been here, watching us, studying us, waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves? Here's the truth no one wants to admit. The shadow people aren't just watching us, they're feeding on us, on our fear, on our energy. Every time you feel that cold chill, every time you see a shadow move, they're growing stronger. And now they're getting bolder. People are disappearing, vanishing without a trace, no bodies, no clues, just shadows. Imagine this. You're home alone, the lights go out, you grab a flashlight, but the beam is weak, and then you see it. A shadow, tall, thin, standing in the corner. You tell yourself it's nothing, but then it moves. It steps closer and closer, and then what it speaks. Run. So tonight, before you go to sleep, ask yourself this. Are you really alone? Or is there something in the shadows, watching, waiting? And if you see them, don't look away. Because once they know you've seen them, there's no escape. Sweet dreams. The history of the shadow people stretches back further than you might think. Ancient cave paintings depict shadowy figures lurking in the corners of primitive dwellings. Medieval manuscripts describe encounters with dark watchers who would appear at the edges of villages, silently observing. Even in the 19th century, reports of shadowy figures were common, often dismissed as superstition. But what if these stories are more than just folklore? What if they're warnings? In 1872, a small town in Germany was plagued by sightings of a shadowy figure that would appear at night, standing at the edge of the forest. The townsfolk called it Der Schattenmann, the Shadow Man. They claimed it would watch them through their windows, its hollow eyes glowing faintly in the dark. One by one, people began to disappear. The town was eventually abandoned, but the legend of Der Schattenmann lives on. Fast forward to the modern era, and the shadow people are still here. In 2006, a security guard in New York City was reviewing footage from a parking garage when he saw something impossible. A shadowy figure emerged from a wall, walked across the garage, and vanished into thin air. The guard quit his job the next day, claiming he could still feel the figure's presence, even in broad daylight. In 2018, a family in California captured something even more terrifying on their baby monitor. A shadowy figure appeared in their child's room, leaning over the crib. The parents rushed in, but the figure was gone. The child, however, was crying uncontrollably. For weeks after, the family reported hearing whispers in the night and seeing shadows moving in the corners of their home. Experts have tried to explain the shadow people phenomenon. Paranormal investigators believe they're spirits trapped between worlds, unable to move on. Psychologists suggest they're manifestations of our deepest fears, brought to life by stress or trauma. But some theories are even more unsettling. Some researchers believe the shadow people are interdimensional beings, slipping into our reality through weak points in the fabric of space and time. They're not here by accident, they're here for a reason, and that reason is us. Here's the terrifying truth. The shadow people feed on our fear. Every time you feel that cold chill, every time you see a shadow move out of the corner of your eye, they're draining your energy. They're growing stronger. And the more afraid you are, the more power they have. Think about it. How many times have you felt an unexplainable sense of dread? How many times have you seen something you couldn't explain? That wasn't your imagination. That was them. And they're not just watching you. They're feeding on you. People are disappearing, vanishing without a trace. No bodies, no clues, just shadows. In 2019, a hiker in the Pacific Northwest went missing. Search teams found his camera, and the last photo he took was unsettling. A shadowy figure stood just a few feet behind him, its hollow eyes staring directly into the lens. The hiker was never found. In 2021, a woman in Texas vanished from her home. The only clue? A single word scrawled on her bathroom mirror: watching. Her family reported seeing shadowy figures in the house for weeks before her disappearance. They moved out immediately, but the figures followed them. Some believe the shadow people can be summoned. Ancient texts describe rituals to call them forth, but they come with a warning. Once summoned, they cannot be controlled. In 2003, a group of teenagers in England attempted one of these rituals. They thought it was a game. They were wrong. Only one of the teenagers survived. He was found days later, muttering incoherently about shadows that wouldn't leave him alone. He claimed they were still watching him, even in the safety of the hospital. He took his own life a week later. So how do you protect yourself from the shadow people? Some say carrying a talisman or wearing protective symbols can keep them at bay. Others believe in creating barriers, salt circles, iron nails, or even certain herbs. But the truth is, no one knows for sure. Once they've chosen you, there's no guarantee you can escape. If you ever feel their presence, don't look at them directly. Don't acknowledge them, and whatever you do, don't show fear. Because fear is what they want. Fear is what gives them power. Imagine this: you're home alone. The lights go out. You grab a flashlight, but the beam is weak, and then you see it. A shadow, tall, thin, standing in the corner. You tell yourself it's nothing. But then, it moves. It steps closer, and closer. And then, it speaks. Run. So tonight, before you go to sleep, ask yourself this: are you really alone? Or is there something in the shadows, watching, waiting? And if you see them, don't look away, because once they know you've seen them, there's no escape. Sweet dreams. Have you ever wondered why the shadow people seem to appear more often at night? Some say it's because darkness is their natural habitat. Others believe it's because we're more vulnerable when the sun goes down. Our minds are quieter, our defenses are lower, and our fear is stronger. But what if there's another reason? What if the night is when they're most active, because that's when they can move freely between worlds? In 2008, a truck driver in Arizona reported a chilling encounter. He was driving through a remote stretch of desert late at night when he saw a figure standing on the side of the road. At first, he thought it was a hitchhiker, but as he got closer, he realized something was wrong. The figure was completely black, as if it had been cut out of reality itself. It didn't move, it didn't react, it just stared. The driver sped past, but when he glanced in his rearview mirror, the figure was gone. What he didn't notice until later was the shadowy handprint on the side of his truck, a handprint that wasn't there before. The shadow people aren't just confined to remote areas or abandoned places. They've been seen in bustling cities, crowded streets, and even in broad daylight. In 2012, a woman in Tokyo was walking through a busy shopping district when she felt an icy hand grab her shoulder. She turned around, but no one was there. What she did see, however, was a shadowy figure standing in the middle of the crowd. It was taller than anyone else, its form flickering like static. The strangest part? No one else seemed to notice it. The figure locked eyes with her, and for a moment, she felt as if her soul was being pulled out of her body. Then, it vanished. Some believe the shadow people are drawn to places of tragedy or intense emotion. Hospitals, battlefields, and old prisons are often hotspots for sightings. In 2017, a nurse working the night shift at a hospital in Chicago reported seeing shadowy figures in the hallways. They would appear at the end of the corridor, standing perfectly still, before disappearing into thin air. The nurse initially thought she was just exhausted, but then other staff members began reporting the same thing. One patient even claimed a shadowy figure had visited their room in the middle of the night, whispering something they couldn't understand. But why do they watch us? What do they want? Some researchers believe the shadow people are observers, studying humanity for reasons we can't comprehend. Others think they're predators stalking us like prey. And then there are those who believe there's something far more sinister, an ancient force that has existed since the beginning of time, feeding on our fear and despair. In 2019, a man in Australia captured something terrifying on his home security camera. He had been experiencing strange occurrences for weeks, doors opening and closing on their own, whispers in the night, and the feeling of being watched. One night, he decided to set up a camera in his living room. What he captured was beyond explanation. A shadowy figure emerged from the wall, walked across the room, and leaned over the couch where he had been sitting just moments before. The figure then turned to face the camera, its hollow eyes staring directly into the lens. The man moved out the next day, but he claims the figure followed him. The shadow people aren't just a modern phenomenon. Ancient civilizations spoke of them, often associating them with death and the afterlife. The Egyptians believed they were the servants of Anubis, the god of the dead. The Greeks called them Skia, or shadows of the underworld. Even Native American tribes have legends of shadowy beings that would appear before a great tragedy. In 2020, a group of paranormal investigators decided to spend the night in one of the most haunted locations in the United States, an abandoned asylum known for its dark history and countless reports of shadow people sightings. They set up cameras, audio recorders, and motion sensors throughout the building. At first, the night was quiet. Too quiet. Then around 3 a.m., the motion sensors began going off one by one. The cameras captured shadowy figures moving through the halls, their forms flickering in and out of existence. The investigators tried to communicate with them, but the only response they got was a low, guttural growl that made their blood run cold. One of the investigators later claimed he felt something grab his arm, leaving behind a handprint that burned like ice. So what can you do if you encounter the shadow people? Some say ignoring them is the best course of action. Others believe confronting them with light or sound can drive them away. But the truth is, no one really knows. What we do know is that they're real, they're here, and they're watching. Imagine this: you're lying in bed trying to fall asleep. The room is dark, but you can still make out the shapes of your furniture. Suddenly you feel a presence. You try to convince yourself it's just your imagination, but then you see it. A shadowy figure standing in the corner of the room. It doesn't move. It doesn't speak. It just watches. You close your eyes hoping it will go away, but when you open them again, it's closer and closer. And then it reaches out. The shadow people are more than just a myth. They're a warning, a reminder that we're not alone in this world, that there are things beyond our understanding, lurking in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves. So tonight, before you go to sleep, ask yourself this: are you really alone? Or is there something in the shadows, watching, waiting? And if you see them, don't look away. Because once they know you've seen them, there's no escape. Sweet dreams.